think start, even though I know some people will come on a little bit later. Hi, everyone. Good evening. I'm Jenna Schulman. I'm a college counselor in Northern New Jersey and have posted a few of these so far during the summer. So I think we're halfway through, which means we're halfway through with the summer, which really kind of stinks. But I'm happy to introduce school today, which is hot year round. So if you like the summer. I know that there's some 50-degree days, but it's usually pretty warm there. So that's nice. And I have Joseph Elliott, who is the regional New Jersey admissions counselor, which means he lives in New Jersey. So he's on our time zone, not on the West Coast time zone. So that's great. And he will be talking all things Wildcats today. I always think of High School Musical when I hear Arizona, and what bear down means, and the spirit and the academics, and how to get there from New Jersey if you guys are from here, what they're looking for with the admissions process, and if anything has changed this year, and explaining more about rolling admissions. Are you still rolling this year? Okay, and what that means, and all things University of Arizona. So I'll hand it over to him, and as always, we will be looking at the questions and having him answer them at the end. So thank you, Joseph.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jenna. And thank you guys so much for joining. I'm gonna just switch up here and get a little PowerPoint going. My name is Joe Elliott. I serve as the Assistant Director of National Recruitment, and I am based out of New Jersey, so I'm a New Jersey native. I always like to preface my talks by letting people know that I did not go to the University of Arizona. I went to school in Wisconsin, but I have had tons of opportunities to go to campus, and I've had tons of opportunities to engage with not only students that are interested, but a lot of our students that currently go to school at the University of Arizona. So I like to think I'm an adopted Wildcat, and a lot of our alumni networks, we actually have one of the largest alumni networks on the East Coast located right in New York City. So I've had a lot of unique opportunities to kind of go and watch basketball games and football games with viewing parties, which is a lot of fun. But we can talk a little bit more about that as we kind of move through the presentation. So, University of Arizona, we are located in Tucson, Arizona. We are the first university in the state of Arizona. This is Old Main. This is the original school building that housed about 33 students and 6 staff. So some of those staff were professors, some of those staff were janitors, some of those staff were chefs and cooks. But you can see Old Main right here. It still stands in the middle of our campus. It's where our university president has his office. It's also where our admissions office is located on the ground floor. Being in Tucson, it's about an hour and a half south of Phoenix, about 1 hour north of the US-Mexican border. And I'll talk a little bit more about what makes Tucson so unique. But really thinking about us, where we are geographically, we are in what's known as the Sonoran Desert, which means we have some pretty ideal weather throughout the year. So I'm in New Jersey right now. The temperature on my phone says it's 88 degrees, but it feels like 97 degrees. That's because it's very humid in New Jersey. Tucson, they were telling me today that the humidity was a whopping 22%. Of course, the temperature was about 105 degrees, and they are going through a monsoon season, so there's a lot of rain. But for the most part, the average school temperature is about 83 degrees, and you have about 350 days of sunshine. So for folks that are in the Northeast or even in the Midwest, it's definitely an ideal place to go to school because the weather is pretty nice year round. Thinking about our campus, so we really have grown from that one building into about 1 square mile. Our campus itself is about 1.5 miles, 2 miles from the downtown corridor. But when you've never been to campus before, the best way to really visualize what our campus looks like is to envision a coffee table. A coffee table is like a rectangle, so is our campus. Even though it says 1 square mile, it's just about 1 mile long, but it is a giant rectangle. Everything and anything is located on that campus. So you have a movie theater, 2 separate recreation centers. We have 17 separate colleges. We have 23 dorms. You can see our football stadium in the background. That's Memorial Stadium. It holds about 76,000 students, faculty, staff, guests, everybody that wants to go watch our Wildcats play football. Campus is also really flat. So you can see all the way in the distance. That's the Catalina Mountain Range. It's about an hour and 15-minute drive from the middle of campus. That is an elevated area. So We're surrounded by the mountains, but everything else is really flat. We're what's known as a high plains desert. So when it's really hot during the day, it actually will cool down pretty considerably at night. So thinking about the temperature in like November, it could be 85 degrees during the day, and at night it could be about 45 degrees. So I always recommend make sure you bring a fleece or a hoodie because it will get cold at night. But really thinking about the campus, there really is everything for every student and every staff member at the University of Arizona and within the community. We have a post office, we have over 35 restaurants on campus. We only have one cafeteria, so food options are pretty popular. But you can see it being flat, the most popular way for students to get around is riding a bike. So it takes about 20 minutes to go from the two ends of our campus corners, but there are shuttles. There is a light rail that connects you from our hospital all the way down to the downtown area. So it's definitely, you could actually never feel like you need to leave campus because everything that you would need would be located on that one property. So kind of thinking about the community. I like to use analogies when I'm talking about the University of Arizona. So my favorite analogy is talking about a bagel. So if you were holding a bagel in your hand, that bagel represents the city of Tucson. And right in the middle of that bagel would be the University of Arizona. So the university is there because of the city, and the city thrives because of the university. So we are known as Wildcats, and we are in Wildcat country. There's another school in Tempe, right outside of Phoenix, called ASU. That is Sun Devil country. So you have two big schools located in the same big state. But what's really nice is that when you're in campus, when you're on campus, when you're in Tucson, everything that you see really revolves around the University of Arizona. So I always talk about the idea of when we have a football game, everybody in the community shows up. When we host the largest student-run spring fling in the United States, it's about 22,000 people come over a course of just 2 days. So it's about 10,000 people per day are showing up. We host the largest private book fair in the entire country, right on our campus. And what's cool is we actually have 3 separate film festivals that we host throughout the year right on our campus that average about 10,000 people to those events each time. There's definitely a lot of cool things that make the city of Tucson and the University of Arizona a pretty fun place to be. And when you're thinking about our students, we have in total about 45,000 undergraduate and graduate students. So as undergraduates, about a little bit over 35,000. And when you're thinking of us, we are considered what's known as like a large size school. So we do have a lot of students. We have students from all over the world. We have a student that comes from every single state in the United States, and we're represented by about 142 different countries. With thinking about where students are coming from in the US, it's about 40% are going to come from out of state. Our largest feeder state outside of Arizona is going to be California, most notably Southern California, so like LA South, followed by Colorado, Illinois, Texas, Washington, then New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut. So we're kind of that New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, we're kind of in that top 6. When you're thinking about class sizes, because everybody sees these big numbers, our faculty to student ratio is about 15:1, and 70% of all the classes at the University of Arizona have less than 30 kids. So we are pretty strategic when it comes to planning out a student's educational experience. Part of that is that we cap a lot of our classes and we don't make them larger than 25 students. So your English Composition 101 class, 25 students. Your Math 1 class will be 25 students. Your lectures, that's where things start getting a little bit bigger. So lectures can typically be upwards of 250 kids. So with a lecture, they're always going to be taught by a professor. And what's nice is there's always a graduate student that's in the room. What's even nicer, to engage our students in this 250-person auditorium, we give students something called a clicker. And the clicker is kind of like a remote control. So imagine you're sitting in a lecture and the professor is asking all these questions and talking about theories and says, do you guys understand what I'm saying? You can look down at your clicker and you can hit yes or you can hit no. If 90% of the students say yes, the professor can look down at a screen and say, well, 90% of the students understand what I'm saying. Let me move on with the material. On the other hand, if 90% of the students click no, the professor could say, oh, you know what? Let me re-explain this material because obviously they're not following along. So this holds the students accountable and also holds the faculty member accountable. With that, we have about 83% of our first year students are going to return for a second year. So There's a lot, and we'll talk a little bit more about academic support a little bit farther in the slideshow, but there's a lot that the university does to really focus in on that student experience. Thinking about what students experience in the classroom, we have about 300 plus programs at the University of Arizona. So I like to say there is literally something for everybody to experience at the University of Arizona. We were originally founded as a mining and agricultural school. So those are two of our oldest majors. So animal science and veterinary science and mining science. Those are the two original degrees that the university offered. And since then, we're about 300. So we have 17 separate colleges on our campus. And what's pretty cool is that all of our programs, all of our colleges work together. So I have worked with students that have majored in dance and engineering. I've talked to students that majored in agriculture and science programs. So it's really a broad range in terms of what a student can experience. As an example, in our College of Humanities, about 55% of the students will do a double major. So if we were on campus right now and we talked to about 20 different students, I could almost guarantee you that almost every student would at least have 2 majors or a major and 3 minors. So it's a really wide variety in terms of academics that students can get involved in. And really diving into that academic experience is some of the things that you can experience outside of the classroom. So students are always encouraged to get involved in internships, part-time work. So if you're just looking for a job on campus, that's something that we can work with you. But what we're really, really well known for is research. So we're a Tier 1 research university. We're also part of the American Association of Universities, which is comprised of 63 separate colleges and universities throughout North America. So we have schools like Princeton, Yale, Harvard, Stanford, University of Arizona, all represent AAU, which means we have a first glimpse and a first look at a lot of the research that's going on throughout the world. But as a Tier 1 university, we do about $680 million worth of research a year, which is more than any other school in the state of Arizona. What's even nicer is that about 70% of the research that's done at the University of Arizona is paid research, and we encourage students to get involved in research early on. So you don't have to wait until your junior or senior year to get involved in research. You can really start in your first year at the University of Arizona. Going outside of the classroom, students go to the University of Arizona for fun experiences. So in total, we have actually 657 different clubs and organizations at the University of Arizona. Our most popular clubs are going to be our student government, Greek life, which is about 18% of our student body. But the most fun one I love talking about is Zona Zoo, which is our student section. So our student section has been consistently ranked as the #1 most rowdiest student section in the Pac-12, which is what we're a member of. So that's the folks that sign up to go and support all of our student athletes at all of their home games and even some of the away games. We also have, as I mentioned earlier, we have 2 separate recreation centers on campus. Our rec center, our original rec center, has an 18-lane heated outdoor pool. It also does intramural programs. There's a masseuse that's there. That's part of your student fees, so you don't even have to pay extra. There is definitely a lot to do and see. And we typically say that if a student is involved in at least one activity over the course of their 4 years, they're going to have a higher graduation rate than a student that doesn't get involved in the club. So we always encourage students to get involved in the club. What's even nicer is if there's a club that doesn't exist, all you have to do is find 3 other people, and you go to the student government and say, the 4 of us want to start our own student club. And they'll say, here's the paperwork. We'll help you walk through the process. So it's a constant number that's always changing depending on what the students want to do. So going to student support services. So we have multiple layers of academic support for students. So our Office of Student Engagement hosts most of these programs. Most popular things that we talk about, I mentioned earlier, that little clicker that students have. So every student that starts at the University of Arizona goes to a program called UA Clicks, so University of Arizona Clicks. This is done the first Friday of your first week, and it will literally explain to you every single resource that you have at the University of Arizona, from how to use a clicker, to how to find a tutor through our think tank, to how to work with our Disability Resource Center, to work on accommodations for extra testing. We even have a program called the Strategic Alternate Learning Techniques Program, which stands for SALT. And SALT is a standalone academic program that students would apply into the University of Arizona and apply into the SALT program. With the SALT program, you get access to a learning specialist that you can meet with for up to 30 minutes per week, every week. You also get access to our trained and certified tutors. And a lot of those tutors will actually teach in our think tank, which is free for all students. And so with all of these layers, I always go back to that number. 84% of our first year students are going to return for a second year because we do so much to really support the students' experience. To even magnify that point, we have a university president. His name is Dr. Robert Robbins. He's in his 4th year at the University of Arizona. When he started, he had to come up with a strategic plan. So how did he see the university evolving over his 10-year tenure? There were 36 pillars, so 36 different objectives that the university was going to focus on. The number 1 pillar at the University of Arizona is the student experience. So Dr. Robbins knows and believes that the most important thing, the most important resource is going to be our students at the University of Arizona. So we are constantly committed to ensuring that the students have a safe, healthy, positive, and enriching experience because we know that the experience they're going to get at Arizona is going to not only make them a lifelong learner, but make them a healthy and positive contributor to society overall. Thinking about campus, we have about 23 dorms on campus. So I always highlight a couple of really important things. The first one is we do not require any student at the University of Arizona to live on campus. We'll even go farther and say we do not require it and we do not promise it. So there is no guarantee a student from out of state or anywhere in the world will have a spot on our campus. But what we always tell our seniors that are applying to the University of Arizona is if you pay a $150 non-refundable deposit to the University of Arizona by May 1st of your senior year, you will be able to pick where you want to live on campus. If you wait until May 2nd, you give us 5 options and we'll do our best to place you in one of your top 5 options based off of availability. So for the most part, all of our students that want to live on campus will live on campus. 70% of freshmen live on campus. It's about 92% of our first year students live on campus. To really drive the point of wanting why it's important to live on campus, we have found that students that live on campus for at least 1 year will have a higher 4-year graduation rate than students that don't live on campus any of their 4 years. Even better is if you live on campus for at least 1 year, you're going to have potentially a whole grade letter higher in terms of your GPA. So we're finding that you're getting a lot more access to our RA and RD, student support services. Some of our dorms even have think tanks, which is that free tutoring located right in their first floor. So there's a lot of benefits for living on campus. But then on the other side, I live in New Jersey. A lot of you live in the Northeast. The cost of living in our area is much higher than it would be in Tucson. So Tucson is considered one of the more affordable college cities in the United States. So most of our students, about 82% of our entire student population, will live off of campus at some point. Part of that is because it is so affordable. And most of our students will live within a 1-mile radius of our campus. So we have a lot of inventory that's local that a lot of students will go to and then just walk or take a shuttle to get back and forth between campus and where they're living. Our newest building that we have on campus is called our Honors Village. So previously, Honors was spread out throughout the entire campus community, and they had one dorm that was designated for all honors students. So keeping up with the times, the University of Arizona built this beautiful building, which is a living learning facility. It houses about 1,100 honors students. Freshmen and sophomores live in dorms. Juniors and seniors live in apartments. Much different depending on what grade level you're in. In addition to living, there is the only cafeteria on campus located on the first floor. Honors faculty are housed within here, so there's a lot of your classes will be here and a lot of your honors faculty. You can set up your office time to go meet with them. There's indoor and outdoor classroom space throughout the building, and if I could lift us up over, it's just a giant square with a huge atrium in the middle. So it's a really beautiful building, and we'll talk a little bit more about what does it mean to be an honors student and what is the process to actually be accepted into the honors program. And if I were able to turn all of our heads to the left of this picture, you would see a brand new rec center that was also built. So thinking about where we are at the Honors Village, this is an 11-minute walk to the center of campus, and then it would be about a 22-minute walk to the other rec center. So going back to where we are. So we are located in the Sonoran Desert. Tucson definitely is a destination. I like to think of it as a food destination because I love talking about food. I already talked about bagels. Now I'm going to talk about something called the Sonoran hot dog. So Sonoran hot dog is a regional delicacy. It actually helped establish the city of Tucson as a World City of Gastronomy by the United Nations, which means we have some of the most unique food culture and art history in the entire United States. So a Sonoran hot dog, just to give you a glimpse of what it is, it's a hot dog wrapped in bacon, stuffed into a Portuguese roll covered with pinto beans and cream de creme. Very delicious, very unhealthy. But thinking about our cuisine, I always like to say if you have to have pizza and bagels all the time, Tucson might not be the best place for you, but if you love tacos and chips, we definitely have that. So we have about 23 total miles of Mexican food. Even cooler, last summer I was on campus and the average temperature was about 105 degrees. We made a trip up to where this picture was taken. It's called Mount Lemmon. It's about 45 minutes from campus. And the temperature when we left in the morning was about 90 degrees. And by the time we got to Mount Lemmon, it was 62 degrees. So it's a much different climate because it is 10,157 feet above sea level. This is actually a place where there's a ski resort, so if you really need snow, you can come up here. But there's tons of biking and hiking trails, camping and climbing. So it definitely is an environment where a lot of people go to because they want to explore and they want to be outside. And then when you think of downtown, you know, Tucson's really not like New York City. It's not like Philly. It's not like Boston. It is definitely a very spread out city. So those buildings that you see in the distance are the tallest buildings in the entire city. So there's 4 of them. Everything else is pretty low-lying, but this is the downtown area. It's pretty popular in terms of music, so you can see the Rialto Theater to the left, and to the right of that you see Hotel Congress, which they both have live concerts pretty much every night of the week. This is also where a lot of unique restaurants are. This is also where a lot of our students will live, because at the bottom of the picture you can see that light rail. So that light rail starts at our University Teaching Hospital in the corner of our campus, swiggles all the way through campus and heads right downtown and comes back. So this is an easy way to get to and from campus. But if you were to walk, it's about 1.75 miles where you walk down 4th Street, where you would see like the old part of Tucson. So it's filled with a lot of cool museum shops, a lot of little restaurants. There's an actual village made of shipping containers that are all little restaurants and stores, which is definitely cool. And what's even nicer is that every restaurant has like plenty of seating indoors and out. And what I always found cool is that all of these restaurants have little misters. So you could be sitting outside, it could be 100 degrees out, you're sitting under mist and a fan, and actually is like being in an outdoor air conditioner. So going into the application process. So our fall application will actually go live on August 1st. So thinking about getting ready, we are rolling admissions. So we say students that apply like in the first 2 weeks of August will actually get the decision back within 2 to 4 weeks. Last year, we had our first round of announcements that came out probably around September 12th. So with our application process, it's pretty straightforward. We have the common application, the coalition application, and then an application on our website. All 3 are looked at exactly the same. The biggest difference between the 3 is access for students. So it's whatever you're most comfortable using. You submit an application. Test scores are only used for honors college, nursing, engineering, and our merit award, which I'll talk about a little bit more later. You pay your application fee or you request a fee waiver. That's it. 20 minutes and you're done. We don't even require students submit high school transcripts. You would actually self-report all your high school coursework. So your first 3 years of high school, all those courses and the grades, and then you would submit your senior year schedule. So just the classes that you're planning on taking in your senior year. And then you just put in progress for like, I'm taking those classes, but I just don't have the grades. And when it comes to the grades, this is what the University of Arizona looks for. So you've submitted your application, you've self-reported all of your coursework. We're gonna take out 4 years of English, 4 years of math, 3 years of a lab science, 2 years of the same second language, 2 years of social studies with at least 1 year of American history, and then 1 year of fine arts for a career technical education. So we pull all of those courses and we build what we call a 6-semester core unweighted GPA. So unweighted, core are those numbers right there, GPA. We're going to use that to determine if you're eligible for admissions to the University of Arizona. Average student last year had about a 3.4 6-semester core unweighted GPA. Now, looking at all of these classes here, you're looking at them right now and you're looking at your transcript and you say, Joe, I have a 3.0 or better in all of these classes. My response to you is, we're probably going to admit you. So we have something called an assured admissions program for the University of Arizona, which means if you go to a regionally accredited school and you have a 3.0 or better in all of these classes, you're assured admissions to the University of Arizona. But if you're like, hey Joe, I didn't do so well in my second language, I only have a C, but I have a 3.0 in everything else in my assured admissions, I would say, unfortunately, you're not. But what we do have is something called a comprehensive review, which means we take your application, we pass it to 2 separate administrative officers, and they look through your entire application holistically. So they'll look to see for your progressions. They'll see, like, did you take more than 2 years? Did you maybe take 3 years? Are you still taking the 4th year? You kind of look at everything to say, can we admit this student or not? So going back, you think, I have an assured admissions plan and I have a comprehensive review. So it's pretty straightforward and it's pretty easy to kind of get your head wrapped around what we're looking at. Now, going back to those test scores, I saw a lot of people mention that, like, what about test scores? We have been a test optional school for about 10 years. When it comes to test optional, a lot of students will say, like, well, I have test scores. Can I still send them to be part of my review? I'll say, you can send them, but we're not going to look at them as part of your review. So when we say test optional, we mean you don't have to send them if you don't want to. You can save the money. And this goes very well for a lot of rising students right now, because a lot of students haven't had a chance to take ACTs or SATs. So you know that you could actually apply starting August 1st, not worry about your test scores, because you can get reviewed for general admissions into business, agriculture, science without a problem. When we think about engineering and nursing, that's where we're just waiting for a little bit more guidance from those 2 colleges to explain what their actual application review is going to look like. So it's a little bit different, and we hope to have a little more information and a little bit more clarity, hopefully by August 1st, so students know how will they be reviewed into that program. Thinking about tuition, we have a guaranteed tuition plan, which means our tuition, whatever you start at, is going to be locked in for 4 years. So you start at this upcoming fall, it's $36,600 is our tuition and mandatory fees. That means sophomore year, it's going to be the same, junior and senior year, which is nice because as a state school, our tuition isn't dictated to us by us, it's dictated by the Arizona Board of Regents and also by legislation. So if that price goes up next year, you don't have to worry about it because you're still going to be locked in at that same rate, which is definitely a great way for planning out. The other part is scholarships. So we talk about scholarships a lot because we want students to get as many scholarships as possible. So the big thing is October 1st, students should send in their free application for federal student aid, get reviewed for federal aid and also institutional aid, which means aid that the University of Arizona will give out in forms of grants. The other thing is called Scholarship Universe. So Scholarship Universe is a website on our financial aid page. And once you're admitted to the University of Arizona, you set up your university email address, and from there you go on to Scholarship Universe and you create a profile. Every week, that profile will send you automated emails that tell you, are there scholarships for you to apply to? You can apply to as many scholarships as you want. There's no limit. And the earlier you apply to Arizona, the earlier you can go on to Scholarship Universe, which means the earlier you can start applying to these scholarships. Most scholarships are anywhere between $500 and $1,000, but thinking if you apply to 20 of them, you get half of them and they're all $1,000, it's $10,000 extra you have in your pocket, you don't have to worry about paying for it. But the biggest one that we talk about is the Arizona Tuition Award. So this big disclaimer is for this upcoming fall. So I do not know what the Arizona Tuition Award will look like for fall 2021. That new grid will be published usually by the beginning of October. So let's go back to that 6-semester core GPA. So you have the GPA starts at a 2.75 out of a 4.0. You have test scores, so 22 to an 1100. We're going to have ACT or SAT, whichever one is higher. So you can see with a 2.75, a 22 or an 1100, you would start out with a $2,000 merit scholarship, which would be good per year for up to 4 years. If you had a 3.25 or to a 3.49 and you had no test scores, you would start out at $4,000. Now that'll go back to that question, but I haven't taken my test scores yet. We have always allowed students to submit their highest test score electronically from the testing agency by May 1st of their senior year. So this is going to give a lot of time for students to still take the SATs or ACTs more than once. So if you were to apply to the University of Arizona and you had a 3.25, no test scores, you get $4,000. You would have all the way until May 1st to extend your, or to send in that acceptance letter or the SAT or ACT score to get reviewed for more money. So this is the first step I always talk about. Virtual visits are a great opportunity to engage with a university. Since COVID-19, almost every school has a exclusive virtual visit page. On our virtual visit, we have a great virtual tour. And if you really want to get the experience on a virtual tour, right now you could probably stand outside and do the virtual tour and kind of feel the heat. We offer one-on-one admissions counselor conversations, so Zoom rooms with all of our admissions counselors. We even offer opportunities for Zoom rooms with our student ambassadors, which I say is sometimes the best way to get to learn a little bit more about what it's like to be on campus, because I work for the University of Arizona. I didn't go there, but we have so many students that did, and we have so many students that are willing to sit down and talk to you a little bit more about their experiences. We also offer every week, every one of our 17 colleges offers an info session that talks about the programs that they offer. So our business college, they offer twice a week. Our engineering college, twice a week. You can log into our virtual visit page, sign up for one of those info sessions, and they're typically taught by a recruitment specialist or an academic advisor, which is another great way to get a little bit more insight about some of the academic programs that we have at the University of Arizona. And then this is my name, Joe Elliott. This is my email address. This is my cell phone number. I'm also going to put it in the chat because this is all I could see right now, and I want to kind of get to some of your questions. But again, I am based out of New Jersey, so I am in the same time zone. And one of the coolest things I always say is, right now, Tucson is 3 hours behind. So if you had a question and you couldn't get in touch with me, you could always just reach out directly to our campus.
Thank you. I learned a lot from that. I too have not been out to Arizona. I don't know if we have any questions, but I have a few. Can you talk a little bit about getting from New Jersey to the University of Arizona, and maybe kind of like how many students are from the Northeast in comparison to the West Coast?
Yeah. So thinking about students from our area, so New Jersey typically sends about 120 students a year. New York sends about 175. Connecticut sends about 100. So we do get a pretty strong showing of kids from the Northeast. Really, our bread and butter on the Northeast is going to be from Washington, D.C. to Boston. So that's really where we're finding most of our students. We actually have 2 full-time regional recruiters based in the Northeast. I'm in New Jersey. Kiana's based out in New York City. But overall, we have about 13 regional recruiters spread out throughout the entire country. So on the East Coast, New York, New Jersey, Georgia. Midwest is going to be Milwaukee and Chicago. We have somebody in Denver, Colorado, 3 people in Texas, 5 people in California, and 1 person in Washington. So it's definitely, we get a lot of students from all over the country, but really for us, it's going to be like that, Washington, D.C. to Boston. Thinking about getting out to Tucson, this is the least favorite question because there is not one single direct flight from the Northeast to Tucson International Airport. So when I fly out, I fly from Newark Airport, typically to Houston to Tucson. I've also flown out directly from Newark, directly to Phoenix, and then you can buy a ticket on a shuttle that will take you from Phoenix Sky Harbor it'll take you that 2-hour trip to the corner of our campus. So really just depending on if you want to have a layover or if you want to have to run through an airport, it's really those are the two best options.
Okay. Somebody asked a question, do you track interest?
No.
Do you want to talk a little bit about like what kids do for fun on the weekends and like maybe weekend trips? I know Arizona has some big cities. I don't know how far away like LA is or Las Vegas, or just kind of like what the general weekend getaways are like.
Yeah, so I think with our students, there's a lot to see and do in the city of Tucson. But if you're looking to get out of Tucson, even if it's for a weekend, San Diego is less than 6 hours away. Las Vegas is about 4 hours away. We have a lot of students that are in our film and television program that will fly up to Sundance to do the Sundance Film Festival. That's less than an hour flight from Tucson. There's definitely a lot. So thinking about those clubs, there's a lot of clubs. There's a biking club, there's running clubs, there's a ski club. There's even a sailing club that will go to San Diego once a month to do sailing programs. We have a really large outdoor enthusiast program, which will do the lower rafting on the lower part of the Colorado River. But really, I think, one of the things students often tell me is the favorite thing to do is go to taco shops. That's kind of like a big thing in Tucson because there are so many, and tacos can be really, really inexpensive. And some of the food is, I like to think that I used to have my favorite taco place in New York City, which now after going to Tucson so many times, I'm like, this place in Tucson is much, much better. So I think there is definitely a lot for students to see and do. And I think a lot of times it's getting involved in clubs or intramurals. Sports is definitely going to be like our biggest draw because so many students go to the University of Arizona. They want to have that big school spirit. And for us, like football and basketball are like national sports. So it definitely is a big, big showing.
Great. So I know you talked a little bit about the SALT program, which I know I love to tell students about that have learning differences and things like that. For students who maybe don't have learning differences, but maybe struggle with like being organized or just like need tutoring like I did in math because I really am not good at math, would you say that they utilize those resources or is it like a completely separate program?
So the SALT Center is as kind of our marquee learning difference program that we have. So thinking, and I see a question about honors, so I can get to that too, and internships, and study abroad. So thinking about, the application process. So let's say we had a student applies on August 1st. They get admitted to the University of Arizona on September 12th. We have an honors application, which is a separate application. So you would apply to the Honors College. First priority is going to be November 1st. So you submit that honors application. And with the honors application, we're not sure about test scores right yet, but thinking about last year, students that submitted test scores, which are required, average ACT was about a 30, average SAT was about a 1510, and the average GPA was about a 3.92. So pretty high threshold to get into that program. There's also a supplemental essay, and the prompts from last year, they typically stay the same and they're still located on our honors website, so you can kind of get a sneak glimpse of what they look like. And then the average honors student has anywhere between 6 to 8 AP courses that they've taken. With the SALT Center, that's also a separate application. So a student would apply into the SALT program. There's a bunch of supplemental documentation that they have to submit. But what I say with the SALT Center is that every student that applies into the SALT program, they know they need this SALT support. So really having that learning specialist is a really critical part for a lot of students because they just need somebody to kind of check in with them every week. Thinking about college, there is nobody to really check in on you. So you're self-sufficient in the regard that if you don't go to class, there's going to be nobody telling you, why didn't you go to class? But having that learning specialist, they're there to kind of help support you and help work with a lot of your executive functions, so like time management skills. They're also a really strong bridge to work with our Disability Resource Center to kind of help ensure that students are getting those accommodations in terms of testing. I don't remember the cost of the SALT program off the top of my head. very sorry, but I can try and find that information in between questions. Really.
I want to say it's like between 2,000 and 4,000 a year. I don't know.
I think it's, I want to say it's anywhere between $4,000 to $5,000 per year. But the
Okay.
one big thing to think about with SALT is the tutoring is really what a lot of students love. So all the tutors in the SALT program, they have to go through a certification program. And what's nice is that you can reserve the same tutor for up to 2 hours every week. So we have a think tank. The think tank is where you just drop in to get general help with like chemistry or biology or math. With the SALT program, you can have that same tutor. So you don't have to reinvent the learning wheel every single time. Because when you go to a think tank, it might be somebody different. At SALT, it's going to be the same person. They kind of get to know your learning habits, which really kind of enhances the learning and tutoring experience. So that's where we see a lot of those students really feel like, yes, this is making a lot more sense. And typically, SALT students we see their grades increasing like pretty high within their first year to their second year.
Yeah, and just in general, like as a college counselor who talks about, sees lots of different schools, University of Arizona is like really one of the only ones I could think of that is really, really large. So if someone's like, oh, like I really want to go to a big school and have football and rah-rah and spirit, but I also have, a learning difference of any kind at all. Like there's not that many schools that are really, really supportive and have a program that are also big and fun and rah-rah and spirited, So it's usually like the smaller schools, which makes sense. So like anytime someone fits those boxes, it's always like go to Arizona or check out the SALT program.
Yeah, and so I just looked it up. So we offer what's called a comprehensive service. So it looks like this upcoming fall 2021, it's $3,100 for a semester. And that includes all the tutoring, all the learning, meeting with the learning specialists, all the resources. So they have a lot of students who use the technology resources. So as technology has been shifting and students are going more to different technology, we have learning aids to kind of help students understand that. So the total cost for the program would be $6,200. Another nice thing with the SALT program that I always talk about, they offer a lot of scholarships directly through the SALT program. So my big thing is if you have an interest of the University of Arizona and you have an interest because of the SALT program, there's a really important step that a student has to take. Once you're admitted into the SALT program, you have to sign the form that says you're intending to go to the University of Arizona for the SALT program. It's a $200 deposit. Now, what's nice about this deposit, it doesn't commit you to the University of Arizona, it just commits you to the SALT program. If you decide not to go to the University of Arizona, you just have to call the SALT program and say, I'm not going to the University of Arizona. They will give you your $200 back. Because if you wait until May 1st to pay your deposit, the response is going to be, we are full and we've been full for about 2 months. So being admitted into SALT is different than enrolling in SALT. So we always have a wait list. So it's very important if you have that intention, like to get that deposit in as soon as possible.
Somebody asked, are SALT tutors learning specialists or peer tutors?
They're learning specialists. So they are, they've gone to school. A lot of them are faculty members. A lot of them are graduate students that are studying psychology and social work. So they are trained. This is what they do. And the average learning specialist has about 25 students to their caseload.
Right. And this is what you're paying for.
Peer, yeah. They're not peers. So.
Right. Someone said, can you talk about internships and how many students study abroad?
Yeah, so internships are available for all of our students. I believe it's criminal justice is the only major at the University of Arizona that requires students to take an internship. Thinking about internships, it's through our office of student engagement and career innovation. And they will work with students to find an internship, whether it's on campus or back home. So I always talk about kids that are in our area, in New York City area, that are business majors. There are more Eller College of Management, so our business program. There are more Eller graduates in New York City than any other place in the country. So we have a very strong relationship with a lot of banks, a lot of finance houses in New York City. So that makes that like summer internship a little bit more appealing because it's kind of easy to get into the city. We have a career center located in Washington, D.C. that just opened. So students that are interested in getting involved in legislative affairs can actually do an internship on like Capitol Hill or within Washington, D.C. and actually have faculty and staff that they can use as a resource located in Washington, D.C. A lot of students asking about public health and pharmaceutical studies. Those that are from New Jersey know that we are a big pharmaceutical state. So we have some really outstanding relationships with like Johnson & Johnson that really help the student get involved in that internship experience. And I would say most students will say like, I at least have like at least one internship. And there are a handful of students that you'll meet that say, I did at least 2 internships. So there's definitely something that, you know, we'll work with students to find the right internship. And we offer, I think it's 7 career fairs that we offer throughout the year. Our business college offers 2 exclusively for business students. So there are vendors from all over the world coming to kind of recruit our students in terms of internships. When you're thinking about study abroad, we surveyed our entire freshman class last year, and 90% of them indicated that they wanted to do a study abroad experience. So we do about 160 programs in about 100 different countries. We actually just started opening up micro campuses throughout the world. So we have some in Southeast Asia, some off the western coast of Africa, that are where our faculty and staff will teach year round. Our largest and most popular area is in Italy. It's about 30 minutes north of Rome. And it's the oldest place that we've had a study abroad program available for students, where it's an actual campus for students, so they kind of really get to experience it overall.
So somebody asked, what are unique programs at UA? And I like to point out that on Instagram today, I posted some fun facts and found out that University of Arizona is the only school that has a Bachelor of Arts in Law, or maybe it's a Bachelor of Science.
Bachelor of Science, yeah.
A Bachelor of Science in Law. So a lot of my students that want to do pre-law, they want to be a lawyer, this and that, and they don't realize that there's actually no law undergraduate degree, and you should do like political science or history. But I can actually say now that at Arizona you can do law.
So we are the first university or college in the United States to offer law as a bachelor's program. We actually offer, it's called a 3+3 law program. So it's 3 years of undergraduate law. You skip the LSAT and go right into 3 years of graduate. So you can finish out your JD in 6 years. This model was so popular that it was taken by another university that has a law school, that's Harvard Law, adopted the same program because it was so popular for students. We really do offer a lot of unique programs. We have the #1 natural resources science program in the United States. We have the #1 management information systems program in the United States for a public school. We offer one of the oldest mining engineering programs in the United States, where our students in mining engineering actually operate the oldest student-run mine in the United States. So there's definitely a lot of programs that make us a little bit different and offer a little bit different in terms of an academic profile. With over 300, it's hard to kind of tick them all off. But I definitely know law is popular for a lot of students. A lot of our engineering programs, so we have an aerospace engineering program that is extremely popular. We have one of the most popular astronomy programs in the United States. US Tucson is known as a dark sky city, which means 95% of all outdoor lighting in Tucson has to be pointed to the ground. So we also have a mirror lab located under our football stadium that builds lenses for some of the world's largest telescopes. So students in aerospace and astronomy have access to some of the most advanced telescopes in the world.
You talk about pre-med program and advising. What are med school acceptance rates?
I don't know we don't have any numbers on acceptance rates for med school. It's not something that they track at the University of Arizona. We do have, so we offer, we have the only public teaching hospital in the state of Arizona directly on our campus. So health sciences is a really big part of a student experience that wants to go into either College of Medicine, nursing, public health, or pharmacy. So those are our big 4 health science programs. So the teaching hospital is definitely really popular because a lot of students will start out doing volunteer work followed by part-time work, followed by internships within the hospital. We also have something called the Aztec building, which is brand new. It's an actual simulation building so that people that are, want to practice their arthroscopic surgery, they can go into the Aztec building and practice how to do arthroscopic surgery. Students that are in pharmacy that want to experiment with mixing chemical compounds for pharmaceutical purposes can go into a testing lab room to kind of practice that out. With pre-med, so pre-med's not a major for us. We offer physiology and science. That will give the pathway for a student to eventually roll into a College of Medicine program. We also have pre-health advisors along with like our pre-law advisors that will work with students throughout all 4 years to kind of fine-tune the application process into a medical program. But thinking about 4 separate colleges for health sciences, all 4 colleges have pretty much the same first 2-year curriculum, which is strategic for us because we want to make sure that students do well in the first 2 years and have options depending on what they want to learn. So if it's, I really want to go into a College of Medicine, you can stick in with physiology. We do have a lot of students that will just like jump out and go into like public health. The same with our nursing program. So for us, nursing is not a direct admit program. Students get admitted into pre-nurse advising. It's 2 years of pre-nursing, and then you actually have to take an exam and then apply into the professional nursing. So it's usually about 250 kids apply for about 50 spots. So it's one of our more competitive health science programs.
Somebody asked, could you talk about the dance in the museum on campus?
Yeah, so we have 4 separate museums on campus. We have the Arizona State Museum, which is pretty cool. It talks a lot about the history of the state of Arizona. And then our dance program is the BFA program, which means students have to do a supplemental application and do an audition. Our dance program is the #1 ranked dance program outside of New York City. So it's a conservancy style program. Students typically do in the dance program, I think last year was 50, well, on a good year, it's about 50 performances that they do through our dance program. So it's basic 4 disciplines of dance, and students definitely get involved. So it's one of those programs where students are not sitting a lot in lectures and classes. It's a lot of interactive work, it's a lot of practice, and either you're doing a performance or you're an understudy and a backup. So there's definitely, I think with dance, it's definitely one of those programs that we're very well known for outside of New York. Because it is a lot of opportunities for students to get involved. And a lot of our students that are doing a dance, there was a student last year that he finally graduated, but for his last 2 years at Arizona was receiving monthly phone calls from Circus Delay to come out. They were trying to get him to leave school just to go and join. So it's definitely a really strong program for us. And a lot of it is because it's a conservancy style program.
Wow. Who knew? That many museums. Cool. Okay, so I guess to wrap it up, unless you have any more questions, so there's a lot of schools out west, Pac-12, big rah-rah schools. Oh, we have a question. All right, we'll do that. Get to that first. Can you transfer internally into engineering or business?
So business, yes, it is definitely a little bit more tricky because business. Students apply into Eller College of Management, they're admitted without a major. So you're admitted into a 2-year pre-business program. And in that first 2 years, you kind of experience all 9 majors within the business college. And it's at the end of your sophomore year is when you actually, you take a skills test and you pretty much interview in to your specific major. There's about 85% of our students will move from their sophomore year into their professional major. You can transfer, like we'll have students like a traditional transfer student will transfer from another school into our business program. There are just some classes that they have to make up to fulfill that pre-business requirement. Engineering is kind of the same. So you apply into our engineering program, you're admitted as a non-degree or a non-major engineering student. You have to take at least 1 semester of intro to engineering, get a C or better in calculus, and then you can just automatically change into any one of the 13 majors within engineering. So you can actually take up to 2 years of intro or 2 semesters of intro to engineering, So your first year, you can take both classes to really kind of ensure that you're going into the right major within engineering.
Okay, great. And then, yeah, so my final question, I guess, like lots of big schools on the West Coast, Pac-12, what would make someone apply and attend University of Arizona?
I always say it's the community. So I am somebody that spent most of my career working at a YMCA, which is definitely a community-driven organization. One of the first things I noticed when I went out on my first trip to Tucson and walked through campus was just how friendly everybody was. So I will always say, like, we're from the Northeast, we're not the most outgoing people all the time, but people from Tucson are definitely very friendly and very outgoing. On my first tour of campus, they come out and they do a story about John Button Salmon, who was our first university student body president. He's also the one that's responsible for our Valley High Bear Down. And our student ambassador was kind of giving the little history about Bear Down and where it came from. And he ends his little presentation by doing our Bear Down cheer. At the same moment that he did that, I turned around and I could see other students were just joining in. And they were kind of doing that because that's a big thing for us. That history and that tradition is big for us at the University of Arizona. The other example I always talk about is Trader Joe's. So I'm sure most people have been to a Trader Joe's. It's a fun place. It's definitely a lot going on. That's kind of what we're like. We're kind of like a Trader Joe's. So there's lots of things going on. There's lots of unique things to get involved in. And people are typically friendly. Whereas when you go to ShopRite, not everybody's willing to say hi, but when you go to Trader Joe's, everybody's going to say hi to you. But I think it's a lot of it is really, for me, it's just like that. The community is one that makes you feel like you're really involved in something bigger. One of my favorite things was where I used to live in New Jersey. I would wear a University of Arizona sweatshirt, and people would constantly come by and say, "Oh, you went to Arizona? That's so cool. I went there too." And I'd always say, like, "I didn't go there. I work there." But everybody's willing to stop and talk just when you're wearing a U of A shirt. I think it's really that community that really drives home like a really positive and exciting learning experience.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah.
And for everyone who lives in, the tri-state area, when things get back to normal, definitely Joe comes to your high schools, and I think you even have met with students before to have questions, but obviously you're available on email and virtual chats and everything like that. So that's really good to know for people. And thanks, definitely for students, apply early so you can find out early and get in early potentially and have an acceptance in September and October, which is nice instead of waiting till January and February to hear from schools, and you know you're going to college at least. Yeah. So, okay. Thank you so much, Joe, and have a great rest of your night. And thanks everyone for joining.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Bye.
Bye.